All right, it is 11 o'clock, and we want to welcome you all to our mental health and behavioral health webinar session on supporting mental health for special populations. We really thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. On behalf of our TEA team and our mental wellness team, we are glad that you took time to be here with us on this June day. So today's session, you're going to hear about best practice strategies for providing whole child supports to increase protective factors and to decrease risk factors for students who are experiencing a variety of challenges. You're going to hear from our partner at the Southwest MHTTC and four of our TEA experts. Our hope is that you'll learn valuable information that can be used in your school community. We're really hoping that you can find resources that you can bring back immediately. So the recording and the supporting resources for this webinar are going to be posted at our website. It's https, and we're going to put this in the chat, so don't worry, schoolmentalhealthtx.org/webinars. And that's going to be uploaded sometime following today's session. Look for that. On this particular website, you can also find our past recordings of our different webinars in case you have missed those. All right, so I'm gonna do some housekeeping before we start. Today's session is in Zoom webinar format, so it means that participants can't show their video or share their audio. But to ask questions, please use a Q&A function, and we're going to do our best to get them answered. Whoa. Sorry about that. Sorry, y'all, something stuck on my mouse. I apologize for that flipping there. So what we're going to do is that after each presenter, we are going to allow time for questions. And your questions are very, very important to us, and we want to make sure they get answered. Sometimes people will use the chat function to put those questions in. If you do that, they may be missed. So ensure that your questions are surely and fully, answered. Please use that Q&A function. However, we do want you to become familiar with the chat function, and we're going to be adding some resource links in the chat for you, as we get started and as we go through this webinar session together. Feel free to use the chat to, comments or anything like that. That would be fine. We would also like to remind you that we're going to provide you a 1.5 CPE credits to educators for today's webinar to those attending the whole session. So a CPE certificate will be sent within about a week to the email address that you registered with. And this is the only way to get your certificate. We will not provide a CPE from TEA for the recordings. All right, so one more bit of housekeeping. See if we can transition smoothly. There you go. All right, so before we conclude our session today, we're going to ask you to complete a post survey. So part of our mental health work at TEA is funded by Project Aware, Texas, through the Federal Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration, or as we like to call SAMHSA. Our grant requires a brief post survey for our training sessions and our stakeholders. So we appreciate your support with this requirement. All right, and we will do that at the end. And the link will be put in the chat later on. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and let's get started. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Natalie Fekoch. All right, there you go. Who is with our partners at let me see if I can get it right, the Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health on the UT Austin campus. So we really appreciate her being here today, and she's going to kick us off by framing how our topic today intersects with our Texas School Mental Health Framework.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to spend with each of you framing and getting us started on this June webinar. The title of this webinar for today is Supporting Mental Health in Special Populations. And so we'll be talking a bit about adverse childhood experiences as well as PACEs. So a little bit about who we are at the MHTTC. We are a SAMHSA federally funded grant entity that happens to be housed at the University of Texas in Austin. And as you can see from this map, there are multiple MHTTCs, mental health technology transfer centers across the country. We just happen to be right here in Texas. Our specific MHTTC supports Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, and tribal communities. And what we do in this area is we provide training, technical assistance, produce resources, and support in different ways, mostly at the state education agency level, and as well as at the regional level with your education service centers here in Texas. This is how we hope to hold a space anytime we have the opportunity to speak at a webinar or in person. We hope that we, as an MHTTC, use affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all that we do that is strength-based and hopeful, person-first and free of labels, respectful, clear, and understandable, and healing-centered and trauma-responsive, to name just a few of them. I want to briefly just talk to you about special populations in Texas. I did a little bit of research. My background, I've been an educator in Texas for 28 years. And so my whole educational career has been in Texas and not the other 4 states that we support. But here is the description from the Texas Education Agency's website of who fits within special populations. At-risk students, bilingual students, CTE, dyslexic, economically disadvantaged, emergent bilingual English learner, ESL, foster care, gifted and talented, homeless, military connected, Section 504, special education, and Title I students fall underneath what we would consider in Texas special populations. I found this information online just for you to have a snapshot from the 23-24 school year of the total enrollment within Texas. We had over 5.5 million students. Of the 5.5 million students, 2.9 million are considered at risk based on our requirements or the way that we label students as at risk in Texas. As you can see, we've got a large bilingual population of 459,000. Dyslexic students, 329,000, 3.4 million economically disadvantaged students, over 1.3 million emergent bilingual English learner students, 641,000 ESL students. We have over 11,000 students who are in foster care, 469,000 students who are gifted and talented, or labeled as gifted and talented, or have earned that designation. Almost 78,000 homeless students who qualify for McKinney-Vento services, over 213,000 military connected, over 400,000 Section 504 students, and over 774,000 students who receive special education services. So this is just a snapshot of our student population here in Texas. And the reason I share this is so that we as a group, as we're talking about special populations and we talk about the unique needs of our special populations in Texas, we now have a picture of how many students this really encompasses. It's a lot of our students, and a lot of our students fall under many of these indicators. So we might have an at-risk student who is also homeless or Section 504 So this gives us a good idea of our numbers here in Texas. So I want to first start by talking to you about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. I'm imagining that a lot of us have heard about ACEs, but to go just a little bit deeper, ACEs are described as traumatic events that occur during childhood. They can have a significant impact on a person's physical, emotional, and mental health throughout their life. Although ACEs increase a person's risk of certain health conditions and behaviors in adulthood, they do not guarantee them. So we have a unique opportunity as professional educators to flip that script. Examples of ACEs include abuse, which can be emotional, physical, or sexual, neglect, either physical or emotional, domestic violence, substance misuse by a member of the household, divorce or separation of parents or caregivers, mental illness of a member of the household, or having a member of the household who has been incarcerated. So I'm imagining that everyone who's here is a professional educator in some shape, form, or fashion, whether a teacher, a paraprofessional, an administrator, a school counselor, superintendent. Think about the students that you have supported who have experienced adversity and might have a number of ACEs, is what we would call them. And now we're going to hear from Dr. Sharon Hoover at the National Center for School Mental Health to hear more about ACEs and what we can do as educators to support our students who have them.
Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs as they're known, are potentially traumatic events that occur during childhood that have an impact, a negative impact on young people's sense of safety and security and stability.
So when we think about things such as abuse or neglect or circumstances that have happened in the household, such as a parent being incarcerated or a parent who has who's abusing substances, it could be things in the broader environment of the young person. So for example, growing up in a household that has mental illness or separation from parents, for example, through incarceration or being moved to a different family environment. It can also be even broader environmental factors. So for example, things like racism, discrimination, poverty, food insecurity or housing insecurity are all under the umbrella of ACEs. And what we know is that when students experience adverse childhood experiences, they are at much greater risk of chronic health problems as adults, as well as other disruptions to their ability to function in their daily lives and into adulthood. The good news is that ACEs are not only preventable, but once they occur, there are things that we can do to mitigate the negative impact of them. And educators are absolutely critical to both of those, both the prevention of ACEs, but also to addressing the potentially negative impact of those. So one thing we know is that having a positive adult in young people's lives is one of the best buffers against ACEs. We know that when students are able to form positive attachments with their teachers, they are much less likely to experience the negative impacts of ACEs. We also know that when students are able to foster social emotional competencies, they are less likely to experience some of the negative impacts of ACEs. So again, teachers are absolutely essential to supporting young people who have experienced adversity and can make a world of difference in their outcomes.
Yeah, so at the heart of ways that we can prevent and work through or help our young people not be severely affected by their ACEs are what we call PACEs. And these are protective and compensatory experiences that are positive experiences that can increase resilience and protect against risk from mental and physical illness. In the PACEs model, supportive relationships and resources make up PACEs. Adults who had many PACEs in their childhood have fewer problems related to health and well-being, even if they've had a history of ACEs. So here's a few examples of PACEs. And as I'm reading these, I would like for you to think about where you might fit in as a professional educator. Parent or caregiver unconditional love, spending time with a best friend, volunteering or helping others, being active in a social group, having a mentor outside of the family, living in a clean, safe home with enough food, having opportunities to learn, having a hobby, being active or playing sports, having routines and fair rules at home, or having a positive relationship even with a professional educator. We often hear about ACEs, and I honestly, this is Natalie speaking, would say that all of our students have experienced an adversity with the pandemic, depending on how old they were at that time. And we can mitigate that by by providing PACEs in our schools, by having a relationship with students or being that trusted adult for them. When working in a school system, there are many frameworks and structures in place that can assist us in making sure that the needs of educators and students are supported. And an MTSS team is one of those. The Texas Education Agency defines an MTSS team as a multidisciplinary student support team, including school staff and community partners, convening to assess the needs, identify and align resources, plan and coordinate mental and behavioral health services and supports with academic supports. Collect data, monitor progress, and practice continuous quality improvement. So we can work through our MTSS teams in a way that is supportive of our students to ensure that they have those paces in place. As many of you probably are aware, the MTSS framework includes 3 tiers that we plan and organize the support and for systems in schools: Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Just take a moment to look at this image, and I would be interested to see what you think this image means. What does it look like to you? I will be reading in the chat box to see what you might consider from this image. Lemonade, yes, someone is making lemonade out of lemons. Sometimes there's so many lemons coming at one time, we don't have enough containers to make them. A sense of overwhelm, everything being thrown at you, struggle to make what's coming, make good out of what's coming at you because it's so quickly. Some of the portions of what I'm sharing this morning with you come from a training that I'll drop in the chat box in just a moment when I finish up. But the good, a lot of our students have so many things thrown at them, they don't have the capacity to make good out of it. And that's where we come in as professional educators, or that's where we can come in. We can work to make sure that we have trauma-informed approaches within our systems that aims to adhere to what are called the 4 R's. And that's just where we realize the widespread impact of trauma and pathways that we can put in place for recovery. We're able as professional educators to recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma, respond by integrating knowledge about trauma into all facets of the system, and really, most importantly, resist re-traumatization of trauma-impacted individuals by decreasing the occurrence of unnecessary triggers, sometimes called trauma and loss reminders, and by implementing trauma-informed policies, procedures, and practices. We have a lot of schools across our state who are doing this in an amazing way. One thing that we can do whenever we're talking to students is just change the language. Simple language used with students, including asking what happened to you, rather than why did you do that? Sometimes we experience behaviors on our campuses and in our classrooms that we don't understand. And we can create a space for openness, honesty, safety, and security for our students. And when there are behaviors in the classroom, it can also be helpful for the professional educator to ask themselves, why did they do that? Rather than immediately jumping to the student. It's often been said that all behavior is communication. And if we see a student that is exhibiting a certain behavior, it's important for us as educators to consider the root. Maybe there is a special need that they have. I know we've got some presenters later in this webinar who will talk about special populations and what needs they might be bringing to our classrooms. Why might this student be exhibiting this behavior? Have their basic needs been met? Are they hungry? Did they sleep last night? Is this learning difficult for them? Did something happen prior to the start of class? Did something just get posted on social media? When we ask this question, what happened to you? It helps us as professional educators to create a trauma-informed and a trauma-sensitive classroom and campus. Relationships are at the center of a trauma-informed classroom and campus. It only takes one caring adult in the lives of a student to mitigate the effects of chronic trauma. A trauma-informed campus has processes in place and a culture of positive relationships and a mindset of connection before content. Understanding that we have to really meet our students where they are before we can start providing opportunities to learn content. One of my most favorite quotes from Dr. Bruce Perry is that trauma is not an excuse for behavior, it's an explanation for it. Sometimes when we see behaviors exhibited on our campuses and in our classrooms, and we wonder why it's happening, it's not always there's always a root typically to that. Another one of my most favorite quotes from Dr. Bruce Perry is, "What works best is anything that increases the quality and number of relationships in a child's life." And from Bill Milliken, "Programs don't change people, relationships do." Sometimes we see across the country programs being brought onto campuses and into districts that, are going to make things trauma informed or trauma sensitive. But at the heart of it are relationships. The heart of it is knowing who our students are and meeting them where they are and providing a safe place for them to learn. So that leads us into talking more about comprehensive school mental health. And this is what comprehensive school mental health is. This is a system where a continuum of services and supports is intended to promote a positive school climate, teach and support skills for social, emotional, and behavioral health, prevent mental health and substance use problems, a place where we intervene early to reduce the severity of mental health concerns, and also a place where we provide access to school-based and community-based interventions and supports to students and families. Hopefully by now, you've attended all these webinars and I've been able to kick off 5 of them, but you've seen this image online that the Texas Education Agency has created for the framework of Texas school mental health. So let's talk a bit about the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse is in the center of the picture, represents the multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, that outlines the structure of the school mental health system. Whenever we draw on a public health approach, that MTSS identifies that there are services and supports planned at all 3 tiers. Tier 1, universal supports for all students. Tier 2, where we intervene early and address emerging mental health concerns. And 1 tier at Tier 3, where we provide intensive or specialized services to support students with a mental health disorder. The MTSS is strengthened by the factors represented on the steps of the school. So you can see that making sure that we have engagement from our leadership, family, and community is really important for this MTSS. Staff wellness, making sure that our professional educators and school staff are well taken care of, and that there is a literacy, mental health literacy is discussed. Students know what mental health is. Feelings are discussed amongst staff and students. That we also have professional development and training in place, and we have trauma-informed policies, procedures, and practices that lead to that MTSS. If you'll take a closer look at the pathway, this is where we see the domains of quality for our student mental health system. Within each of these domains, districts and schools can explore best practices for effective school mental health systems. They can benchmark their local practices to national quality standards and plan for and prioritize improvements. The video we saw earlier is from the National Center for School Mental Health, and I'll drop all these links in when I finish. They have created a tool called SHAPE, which is it's a free tool available online where schools can assess how well they are building a comprehensive school mental health system. And the way that they do that is you gather an MTSS team that takes a look at everything that's on the steps, teaming, needs assessment, early identification, et cetera, and the team assesses it and it provides a strategic plan for you to make sure your path is going the right direction. You take a closer look at the clouds. These are the components of a comprehensive school mental health system above the schoolhouse. These are identified in Texas Education Code, and they represent the areas where our school districts must develop practices, procedures, and/or professional development opportunities. These are outlined in the School Mental Health Toolkit that the TEA has developed, but the resources, best practices, and trainings for each of these components are available on the TEA's website. So taking a closer look at each of these clouds, if you've attended each of these 6 webinars this spring, you've noticed that we've touched on a lot of these in the content that has been discussed each month. taking a closer look to how this fits into our topic for today, which is um, supporting the mental health needs of special populations, really every single one of these fits there. We should be preventing and intervening early. We should have suicide prevention, intervention, postvention in place, positive youth development opportunities, substance use prevention and intervention, grief and trauma-informed practices, EBIS. We should be building relationships, managing emotions and decision-making skills, also known as SEL competencies, and creating a positive, safe, and supportive school climate. And the way that we do that down at the bottom of this image is by monitoring progress, early intervention, providing those specialized services to our special populations, making sure that we have mental health promotion and prevention. We have screening in place for early identification, and we are needs assessing and resource mapping, and we have a team that's coming together to do this. Some of the experts that you'll hear from when I finish are from the Texas Education Agency, who support these special populations in ways that you may not even be aware of. So I encourage you to listen closely to the knowledge that they share and see how this is going to fit in to make sure that our special populations are supported. And I think that's it, Tammy.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Natalie, for like such a great presentation. Before I kind of get into our Q&A, I do want to mention that we are going to have a Q&A right now with Dr. Natalie. So if you all have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A using the Q&A function, and Tammy will make sure that we kind of get through those and ask questions as well. But I just want to start by saying also, Dr. Natalie, thank you so much for such a good framing. One of the things that we were kind of talking about in our little bullpen as we were prepping for today is just about how like a lot of us really do know about ACEs, right? Kind of getting familiar with it. I think we can all, agree that our students and families all across Texas are going through a lot often, right? We recently in Harris County, where I'm based at right now, had some pretty bad weather, right? Tornadoes coming through, flooding, which is an example of some of our students experiencing adversity, but also across the state, right? Substance abuse issues, whether it be around, specifically fentanyl or opioids. But one of the things that you did do, right, is like, we do have the ability to understand these needs, but we also have some tools in our toolkit to actually address these needs, right? And one of the things you mentioned was the protective and compensatory experiences, or PACEs, kind of mitigating some of those ACEs, or the adverse childhood experiences that we were talking about, right? So I think the question I'll start off with right now is really around, thinking about PACEs and some of the strategies that can do exactly what AWARE is intended to do in Texas, right? Build that resiliency, build that grit with our students and families. So are there any resources or strategies that you can turn educators or school leaders to in terms of being able to really kind of get in and do some of those strategies related to PACEs?
Yeah, so I just dropped in the chat box the website where I learned about PACEs from acesconnection.com, but I will reiterate a few of the things that we can do and things that we can think differently about, and things I've experienced working on campuses. Giving that unconditional love and unconditional regard to our students, creating mentoring opportunities for any students who come into your campus or district who might be a newcomer or in the foster care system or homeless. I mean, making sure that there's extra wraparound supports from them, not only from our professional educators, but all school staff. Our cafeteria and operational custodial staff are great mentors. Creating opportunities for service learning projects on our campus is also a great way to do that. It seems like that happens a lot more maybe in our junior high and high schools with student council. Sometimes they take the lead on that, but is there a way to think differently in our elementaries? Is there a way to have a field trip that goes to the food bank or helps with, I don't know, serving the community that you live in? Another pace that I mentioned was living in a clean, safe place with enough food, enough materials. Of course, we don't have access to our students' homes, but is our classroom clean and organized? Do we have a place where students can get the supplies or clothing or food that they need, like a food pantry I remember having that on a campus I worked in. Being active or being actively involved. Is there an opportunity? I remember working in a school district where it was a requirement of this, it was a CTE campus, but it was a requirement that every student was involved in a student organization.
Mm.
And they actually they made it a part of the day once a week, where they would go to these respective places where it was I remember one of the groups was like origami, one was learning how to cook, one was learning how to interview, one was people who love music. And so creating those opportunities for kids to learn about things that are beyond the curriculum and create connections,
Mhm.
having routines and fair rules. And so when we are on a campus, is there routine to the day, or do we have student voice in creating consequences and procedures for our campuses? Those are just a few I can think of off the top of my head. I see a question in here. What are some tools or strategies for family buy-in? Yeah, I definitely I think I would say the families need to feel welcome. They need to feel like they're part of the school community, and that starts with relationships and trust. And so is there a way for our campuses to create an opportunity every month where parents are invited, or families or caregivers are invited to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that I really pulled out of that as well is just that creating that environment of love, right? Like making sure our kiddos can feel the love when they're walking into a campus, right? And you kind of, and also those opportunities for involvement. You made me think about our previous webinar session last month where we highlighted Hope Squad and the ability for all of those kids to really be trailblazers on their campus, right? So they can create that environment of love and support for all of their counterparts and peers at the campus and school as well. So thank you for that. I'm gonna bring on Tammy because she is working our Q&A function, and I want to bring you on, Tammy, in case we have some questions in the Q&A that you'd like to share.
First one, it was about asking about the ACEs video. Can they have the link to that?
I will place all the links from the things I shared in the chat box for everyone, including Classroom Wise, which is a free mental health literacy online training that the National Center has put together in partnership with the MHTTCs, but it's free and all those videos are embedded. You can search various things from classroom connection to managing misbehavior, and it'll pull up a 2 to 3 minute video that has been created both for elementary and secondary level. I'll be sure and
So
drop it.
appreciate that, Natalie. Hey, we do have a couple more in the Q&A, but they're kind of more general, so I'm going to save those so that we can jump to our next presenter. And so with that, Ashton, do you want to introduce our next presenter?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Dr. Natalie. All righty. So our next presenter will be Desiree Viramontes, who is the Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth, or TECHY, state coordinator for the Division of Highly Mobile and At-Risk Programs here at TEA. Desiree is going to share about some of the mental health needs of our students who are experiencing homelessness. So again, we are going to do a Q&A right after her presentation. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A function, and Tammy and I are going to make sure we work to get those addressed. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Desiree.
Thank you, Ashton and Tammy, for the opportunity. Also, want to bring on Dr. Ann Lay, who is my co-presenter for this.
Good morning, everybody.
So we're going to cover with you some of the basics from McKinney-Vento, the national law, for Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth program that we run. I just love it when you share and it doesn't want to work.
I know sometimes the little arrow button is kind of like a little invisible in the bottom left-hand corner too when you're in that like presenter mode.
I've been having so many fun issues with my computer this week. Anne, can you pull it up?
Yes, I'm trying to pull it up right now. Let me see here.
I love that it totally worked before. It's my favorite.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can share.
There we go. It's always good to have two people. It always helps. All right, you'll go to the next one. All right, so Dr. Desiree Baramontes, I'm the state coordinator, and have Dr. Lay with us, who is our HMAR program specialist, and we're going to dive right in. So objectives and outlines, we're going to go over some of the key requirements of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, as well as the roles and responsibility for school districts and open enrollment charter schools to support students experiencing homelessness. McKinney-Vento definition, data requirement for all school districts, also known as LEAs in the law, as well as implementation, identification, enrollment, and services that we provide through our school districts, as well as Touchy program updates and resources. So common terminology, McKinney-Vento refers to the federal McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. It lives inside of ESSA. So if you're looking for that, that's where it is. The Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth program refers to the Texas McKinney-Vento program. If you drop off the T and you just have EHCY, that is the national program for students experiencing homelessness. And students experiencing homelessness refers to McKinney-Vento eligible students that are coded in our PEAM system to receive services, wraparound supports, as well as services through our local education agency, which refers to Texas Public Schools and open enrollment charter schools. So a couple of definitions and requirements. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act ensures that students have immediate and equal access to public education. One of my favorite parts of 20 years in education about McKinney-Vento is that when you hear McKinney-Vento, a lot of our act is breaking a lot of rules. So when we say immediate enrollment, students are able to enroll without any paperwork. Students that are on their own are able to enroll without any paperwork. And so most of the stuff we're going to go over usually throws a lot of folks off because they're like, I didn't know you could do that. And in our program, you are able to do it. So it's important for school districts to review and revise policies to remove barriers to school enrollment. Sometimes they'll put school enrollment policies that do not help with the retention of homeless children and youth, as well as defining enrollment as attending classes and participating fully in all school activities. So who is covered by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act? Children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime resident, including children and youth. So something that a lot of people don't know about homeless children and youth is that they usually live in a variety of these homeless living situations, which goes to not being in a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. They could be doubled up, which is sharing the houses of others, motels, hotels, trailer parks, camping grounds, due to the lack of alternative adequate accommodations, living in emergency or transitional shelters or abandoned in hospitals. as well as living in a public or private place not designated or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation. That could be living in someone's driveway, that could be in a garage, that could be in housing that's been stripped by a tornado or a hurricane or any of the weather events that hit Texas all year long. And so really looking at a very robust definition that's much larger than our HUD definition for homelessness to really help students mitigate the effects of experiencing homelessness. So who is covered by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act? So it can also be students that are living in cars, parks, public spaces, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations, migratory children living in the above circumstances, or an unaccompanied youth, which includes a homeless child or youth not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Get a lot of questions about unaccompanied youth. So it is simply a designation that we use inside of the school setting to help a student who's experiencing homelessness that is not with their parent or guardian for a variety of reasons. So McKinney-Vento requirements for all school districts. Number one is to appoint a local McKinney-Vento homeless liaison and ensure they have the capacity to carry out the duties listed in the statute. There can be a lot of school districts that wear multiple hats, as you will hear, and they need to make sure that they have the capacity to be able to serve all of the different students that are in their school district. Part of the McKinney-Vento liaison's duty is to identify students experiencing homelessness, enroll students experiencing homelessness immediately, even without required records, make student records available in a timely manner, provide services to students experiencing homelessness that are comparable to those offered to other students. When you're looking at this, we covered review and revising policies that can act as barriers, as well as making some new policies that can help eliminate barriers for students experiencing homelessness. Continue the students' education in their school of origin. Provide school of origin transportation if it was requested by a parent, guardian, or unaccompanied youth and is in the best interest of the student. Provide written notice to parents, guardians, and unaccompanied youth related to the appeal process if the LEA sends a student to a school other than the school requested. So 2018 through 2023 statewide data. It's important to note that usually you'll see a representation of data at the PEAM snapshot, which is in October, and that's like a mid-year look. At the end of the 22-23 school year, we saw 114,536. So we are back to identification from our pre-COVID days and looking forward to September to see what the end of year totals are going to be for the 23-24 school year. We always have a little pause to process. If there's like any questions as we go through anything, feel free to add that into the Q&A or the chat feature if you guys have any questions as we're going along. McKinney-Vento identification, enrollment, and services. So LEA should have processes and strategies in place to identify students experiencing homelessness upon enrollment anytime during the school year in the event of a natural disaster. This is ongoing all throughout the school year. A student can drop into homelessness at any time. So it's important to have those processes in place. When you're looking at this, you want to provide immediate enrollment before you do a determination of McKinney-Vento eligibility, and then do an assessment of what services are needed for the student experiencing homelessness. Students experiencing homelessness have the right to immediate school enrollment. Even if lacking paperwork normally required for enrollment, they can enroll provisionally without immunizations, birth certificates, any school records, even if having missed application or enrollment deadlines during any period of homelessness. Provisional enrollment with incomplete school records. I would say like there's a good chunk, like 80% of students that are going highly mobile, that are experiencing homelessness. Most of those records can be grab from the TREC system. There is a 10 working day requirement under the law to make sure that those records are given to the other school. And some examples of records that are included in a TREX request can be the Texas Unique ID, the date of birth, current grade level, social security number, and immunization information. When students are moving around a lot, they usually do not maintain their vital records. It's an ongoing problem inside of the student homeless population. State district selection provision. So this is unique to Texas. We have a lot of unique to Texas state laws. In state district selection provision in Texas, if a state district, anybody who's experiencing homelessness can select any school district in Texas if they're experiencing homelessness. And the McKinney-Vento liaison assists in selecting the campus that best meets the needs of students experiencing homelessness.
I'm gonna skip that.
Yep, that's fine. So every year at the beginning of the year, there is a sample SRQ, which is a student residency questionnaire. I'm sure a lot of you filled out the welcome home packet or online enrollment when you are doing that each year for your students. One of in that is a student residency questionnaire where a student is able to say, yes, their current address is a temporary living arrangement, and if it's due to a loss of housing, economic hardship, or financial difficulties. And then the McKinney-Vento liaison usually will go through the intake process with that student to verify that they are in a homeless living situation and then work to get them wraparound support services. Different school districts work in different ways. There's a lot of times where the person that is doing the intake and is the McKinney-Vento liaison is either a counselor or they are a social worker working at the district level to help make sure that students are connected to mental health supports and counseling supports, as living in homelessness can be a very traumatic situation for our students. We can go, so the SRQ and intake process, assessing McKinney-Vento eligibility. What is the families or unaccompanied youth's current living situation? Is it temporary due to a recent loss of housing? Is it fixed, regular, and adequate? Is the family or unaccompanied youth living in a hotel, shelter, unsheltered, or double up living situation? Events that may lead to a loss of housing are unemployment, divorce, domestic abuse, medical issues, lack of affordable housing, and a natural disaster. Identification of unaccompanied homeless youth. So review each situation on a case-by-case basis. Review their living situation and nighttime residency. Students must both be unaccompanied and experiencing homelessness to qualify as an unaccompanied youth. Transportation is for all LEAs. So transportation must be provided to and from the school of origin at the request of the parent or guardian. A school of origin is the school in which the student lost their housing, or the school that they were last enrolled. They're able to stay inside of that school of origin, being identified in the McKinney-Vento program. And this is if they live outside of the attendance area, they're able to receive transportation support to their school of origin. Collaboration occurs between different school districts to arrange this transportation. And it does take a little bit of time to get the routing set up for the school of origin transportation. Best interest determination. In determining best interest, the local education agency shall presume that keeping a child or youth in their school of origin is in the child or youth's best interest, except when doing so is contrary to the request of the parent, guardian, and unaccompanied youth. This is unique that parents or guardians or unaccompanied youth are able to request staying in the school of origin, and it is up to them whether or not they would like to stay in it. There is a conversation that you have with the best interest where you're considering student-centered factors related to the child or youth's best interest related to the impact of mobility on achievement. education, health, and safety, giving priority to the request of the parent or guardian. So if you have, for instance, a high school student who is needing to travel 2 hours to get to their school program, if that is the only school that offers some of the academies or some of the higher academic courses that they would like to finish and it's not offered in the school district that's next to them, also them living so far away is going to be a very short time period, and then they're going to be able to move back closer to that high school. That would be an instance where that would be in the best interest of the student to stay in origin. You can also have a student that if you turn that situation and you were looking at another family member, if they were potentially like 5 years old in kindergarten or 10 years old, a 2-hour bus ride may not be in the best interest for that student and may not have all of those factors in doing that. So that's just a glimpse into what a McKinney-Vento liaison does when they're doing the best interest determination. So duration of school of origin rights, they have the right to attend their school of origin for the duration of their homelessness. In any case in which a family becomes homeless between academic years or during the academic year, for a remainder of the academic year, the child or youth becomes permanently housed during an academic year. So once they're identified as experiencing homelessness in the school setting, they remain identified throughout the rest of that school year. And then each year they will work with the McKinney-Vento liaison to see if they qualify for that next year. They could be in a duration of homelessness for 5, 7 years, the entire time that they are in a school setting, with their parents unable to find permanent housing. All right, so Lozano, she raised her hand. Is she able to say her question unmuted or?
No, ma'am. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function or please use the Q&A function. If you have a comment, you can use the chat.
Okay. So for post-secondary planning and support, school counselors must assist students experiencing homelessness with college preparation and readiness. Local liaisons must inform unaccompanied youth about their independent student status on the FAFSA and assist with verification of that status. It's unique to McKinney-Vento and being able to do that. It is intended to do a warm handoff to post-secondary opportunities, as well as having that conversation with students about how to fill out the FAFSA. If you're an unaccompanied youth, that letter helps you get full Pell Grant funding, which is huge for our students experiencing homelessness. Sample FAFSA verification form can be found on our TEPSHE website. The verification letter is for unaccompanied homeless youth for the purposes of federal financial aid. So we have a paused process, but we'll just go through the programs and resources that we have for TEPSHE. You can find the full McKinney-Vento 101 recording. It's a 2-hour robust, and it'll take you through all the different aspects of the McKinney-Vento program. On our website, we have a sample student residency questionnaire, intake form, immunization flowchart, sample transportation letter, a full dispute resolution resources on our dispute resolution in doing that for identification and enrollment, posters, as well as our infographic, and we'll have a new one by the end of the summer. We're very excited for that. And then, so all of our ESCs have regional McKinney-Vento liaisons that help with technical assistance. So it goes from the school district to our ESC, and then we take it if it becomes a dispute or if they need additional information and clarification on the McKinney-Vento Act.
Great. We've got several questions, if you don't mind. I'll jump in and
Sure.
well, one of the questions was asking if a copy of the slides could be available.
Yeah, we have the full 101 slides are on our website, and into the
if you can
chat.
get back to us too, we can always update that link. Or yeah, if you could put that link in chat, that is perfect. Another question here was, if a student is in CPS custody who is in child without placement and is living in a motel, are they eligible for the McKinney-Vento services?
Yes, they are. So Many times with at-risk determinations, you can have cross-identified. Child without placement, especially during COVID, was a huge problem. When I was a sitting McKinney-Vento liaison, we had hundreds of students in the Central Texas area that were living in offices of CPS or motels and hotels, totally qualifiable under the McKinney-Vento Act, since they were living in different like substandard situations or a motel or hotel.
Are there any requirements for vaccination records, birth certificates, etc.?
Tammy, I didn't hear the first part, it cut off.
Okay, with immediate enrollment, are there any requirements for vaccination records, birth certificates, etc.?
So they have to have their initial immunization shot or some kind of showing of an immunization shot. That doesn't usually preclude them to doing the immediate enrollment. A lot of times the McKinney-Vento liaison will work very closely with the school nurse. There's program requirements to make sure that the liaison is helping them find that community support to get that immunization. Oftentimes in doing the TREX request, it's not uncommon for a liaison or a registrar or whoever's helping out in that situation to call up the other school district to see if they can expedite that TREX request, which usually takes 30 days, but for students experiencing homelessness, it's 10 days. And immediate enrollment doesn't have like a necessarily like day or timeline, and it can be case by case on what that looks like. But usually we want them to be enrolled within at the school.
Okay. And then another question is that if you have a student with a, let's say they're having an emotional difficulty, they're seeing a counselor, they happen to be in a shelter in another district, just to confirm what you said earlier, they can stay at that particular school district.
That is correct. Yep. So that is called school of origin. And under the federal law, the school district is required to provide what is known as school of origin transportation from that shelter to that school district for the duration of that school year. It can take a little while to get it routed and set up because the responsibility of that transportation is the school district in which they are residing. So that would be where they're at with their shelter, as well as the school district that they're attending. They work out like one will do AM, one will do PM, or some kind of reimbursement system.
Okay, and that leads me to the next question. We have someone asking for, suggestions. Is there any information on how to collaborate with other school districts for transportation if they are out of the boundary?
Yeah, so when you're McKinney-Vento students, transportation is all outside of the attendance area. So outside of the attendance area doesn't just include like outside of the attendance area for that school within that school district. Most of the time it includes living outside of the school boundaries completely. And so you are working hand in hand with that other school district. Tips and tricks after working in this for 10 years, I would say definitely having a great relationship with the McKinney-Vento liaison with the transportation department and the routers and having consistent communication. You are going to at one point have a request that comes from them. You're giving them a request. It's usually 50-50 and works out very well. And so a lot of times we work with school districts than other positions and know all of the school districts that surround your school district and assisting you with school of origin transportation. And most of the time you can do, like, we did a lot of cross planning with the other school districts, working through our regional service centers to meet with the other liaisons, as well as hosting like transportation where you bring your transportation router with you and you kind of talk through the different solutions and ways to mitigate like routing timelines and what's going on, and just make a good relationship between the districts.
Great. There are tons of questions in the Q&A for you, Desiree. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask one more just for time, and then you do have access to the Q&A on your end if you wouldn't mind catching some of those, because they're really great questions. So this one I want to ask before we end, because this does have to do with a protective factor as we're looking at mental health. So does a student have to be currently labeled as homeless to receive full Pell Grant eligibility? Or can they have a history of homelessness sometime during grade school, but are not homeless their senior year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's different in foster care. They have like full college access and they're able to go to college for free once they take that first course. In McKinney-Vento, since they've separated homeless and since they've separated homeless and foster care, homeless only works for a very small sliver for that unaccompanied youth. And you have to be an unaccompanied youth in your senior year. You have to be identified by the McKinney-Vento liaison. It can also come from, like, if they're living in a shelter, the shelter director can also do it, as well as being identified through their federal financial aid office. And so when you're talking about unaccompanied youth, let's say you have 50 seniors, usually it's only 9% of those students nationwide that are unaccompanied youth in their senior year that would qualify for the verification letter. And then when they're filling out the FAFSA, there's a way to go through the FAFSA where you're able to click that you are an independent student, and then it kind of switches to where you're a dependent student inside of doing that. So it's really helpful to have a counselor and a McKinney-Vento liaison working with that student to navigate that. I always tell a student, you know, you've done it right because you've skipped all of the parent questions. So, like, there's no parent financials, there's no parent questions. If you've hit a parent question, you and I need to meet. Let's get into a meeting. Let's talk it through and figure it out. And then they're eligible for the full Pell Grant funding if they're an unaccompanied youth, but that's not all students experiencing homelessness. And it has to happen. They have to be identified in their senior year. And I will definitely jump on the Q&A, Tammy, and answer some of those.
Beautiful, because yeah, there are several there. All right, we appreciate that. Okay, Ashton, I will hand that over to you. See you on now.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. All righty. So thank you again to our team, our Techi team, for being able to share a lot about our ways to support our students that are experiencing homelessness. Now I am going to turn it over to our next presenter, Sarah Vercher, who joins us today with her expertise on the mental health needs of students who are at risk. Sarah is a student mental health program manager for communities and schools with the Counseling, Advising, and Student Supports, or CAS team within our College, Career, and Military Prep division of TEA.
Rolls right off the tongue.
I love that you have to do that all the time. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashton and Tammy. That's amazing. I'm going to attempt to be smooth about this. And it's clearly not my jam to be smooth in transitions. Welcome. As Ashton mentioned, I am the student mental health program manager, and I work on the CAS team, which is Counseling, Advising, and Student Supports. We are nestled in CCMP, which is College, Career, Military Prep. And so there are 3 positions that support communities and schools, and we'll dig in a little bit to who they are and what they do in just a moment. I very specifically support programming, whether that's mental behavioral health programming, standard MTSS. Both of the presentations this morning really culminate in what communities and schools looks to support. We have a new data and program support analyst. His name is Jaime Cervantes, and we currently have an open position. So CIS state coordinator, which we are looking to post. We're going to run state time on that. So if I say we're looking to post within the next month, continue to watch for that posting another month after that, lovingly. So what we're going to talk about today is the philosophy and structure of communities and schools. What does it look like in Texas? What is the model, and how do we consistently deliver the model across all community and school affiliates and all campuses that are served? And we're looking for implementation with fidelity. What are the services that we support, and how do we support the outcomes? What does that look like? And so what we'd really love you to understand coming out of this presentation is understand CIS's role in supporting Texas schools and students, and then the documentation that we collect and that we also report to the legislative board. So our philosophy, it was amazing. Dr. Fekosh had a quote that said, programs don't change people, relationships do. And that was quoted from Bill Milliken, who is the founder of Communities in Schools. So I think it's phenomenal that we are relationship driven. We can be, so we'll talk about the structure of what that looks like, but the site coordinator who has boots on the ground at the campus level tends to be the one-on-one relationship that the student has with the caring adult. All of our staff are trained in relationship building and interviewing and trauma-informed practices, and receive all the trainings that can help students who are at risk really thrive. What do we look like across Texas? So nationally, actually, there are 128 CIS affiliates that serve 2,600 campuses in 25 states, including DC, across the nation. Within that pocket, we are 27 CIS affiliate organizations strong. Last year, we served over 1,400 campuses. And they are each a grant partner, which I'll talk to that just a little bit, but each what I call affiliates that are highlighted in blue here are their own nonprofit organization that contracts directly with school districts and receive monies from the legislators. So they do apply for non-competitive grants annually. So the trajectory and what is really cool about CIS is that we are one of the only wraparound support services that has been funded directly through the legislator since the 80s. So they apply, they being the executive directors of each 27 affiliates, directly for the non-competitive grant. The grant comes from LEDGE, and TEA is the fiduciary and requirement component of sending out those funds to support students. The eligibility component for students to be case managed at the school level is they must meet the at-risk criteria. And so we're looking at highlighted for delinquent conduct. They're eligible for free and reduced lunch. There's family conflict and crisis, or they receive TANF. And within those components are students who have been identified with foster care or homelessness, right? So they work very closely with the McKinney-Vento staff and really serve at-risk students. Here's a little bit about our model, right? And so this ties right into that multi-tiered systems of support. We call it integrated student supports, which is essentially the tiered supports at the school and student level. So I tend to describe the model. It moves in two systems. One system is at the campus level. So there is an identification of campus need, and then they align their goals for the campus with the administrative staff to ensure that the work that they're doing on that campus is driving the outcome for that campus need. Then they plan services, they deliver services, and then they follow up on services, right? So that's the implementation of that model at the campus level. The campus level tends to be tier 1 services only, which is full staff, full student population. So sometimes you'll see opioid and vaping presentations that communities and schools will bring in onto the campus. So that's a one very specific resource that you see. Once the campus model is completed, then students who are at risk are referred to communities and schools on that campus, and then they run through a process for eligibility, assessment, planning, delivery, and monitoring, just like they did. So for every student that is case managed, generally, it's 100 or under, as how big the caseload is for an individual campus. The site staff have the ability to target and support academics, attendance, social services, and mental behavioral health needs, right? So once the needs are assessed and identified, then the planning and service delivery moves into 10 very distinct areas that support different components of mental behavioral health growth, right? So it could look like skill building at a tier 2 level for a set of students who attend a group and need to build social skills, or executive functioning skills, or self-regulation skills, right? So that is a component. It can be a high-risk behavior student. So someone who's moving into conduct, one of your students that's struggling in elementary school that we lovingly refer to as high risk for running, or high risk for causing harm to themselves or potentially others. And they can also support with mental health crisis on a campus. And so those relationships and processes are implemented when you see CIS on a campus. They are not district employees, right? And so sometimes that works to the advantage of students who may be behaviorally struggling and need that person or that adult who is not a campus employee. They now become a little bit removed from someone who can write a discipline report, somebody who can really penalize the process of their learning, instead support them through that process. They do also, though, work very closely with the nurse, with the school counselor, with any behavioral staff that is from the district or the campus level. And they usually tend to meet with the administrators, whether that's the principal or AP, at least monthly, to talk through needs of the campus, if those have shifted, to bring their outcomes of the work that they're doing and say, does this match, right? Is this supporting you in a way that you need? What they do is provide those individual services for case managed students. Those are the students that they really build that rapport with. These are very specific areas that communities and schools can support, and really drives into that multi-tiered system of support. When you have an MTSS team, or I mean, each school and each campus calls it something else, right? So is it a student huddle? Is it the student support team, safe and supportive team, right? So wherever that administration and team is pulling together generally on a weekly basis to talk about at-risk and high-need students on that campus, this is a great place to infuse CIS. Many of the students who will be talked about in a confidential, supportive way in those meetings to integrate supports could be potentially either on their caseload or supported by being added to the caseload. This is also an opportunity to CIS site staff have the ability to do home visits. They have the ability to do transportation. They have the ability to move outside of district staff to meet the needs of the families. One of the things that's really critical to me is when we're talking through the range of mental behavioral health supports. A lot of times when you hear people talking about mental health supports, people tend to hone in on clinical supports, right? And so do some CIS affiliates have clinical staff that can see students? Absolutely, if that's the need in the area. Can CIS If they don't have someone clinically on staff to provide counseling and support, can they make a referral to the community? Absolutely. But we also look at the other end of the continuum, which is building those behavioral health skills. The site coordinators have this ability. So when they build behavioral health skills, which can be skills around grief and loss, skills around substance use and education, really hoping to do preventative work to keep it from abuse and hospitalization. Like I mentioned before, there's skill building, there's executive functioning, there's social skills, and there's self-regulation are the 3 skill building buckets that site coordinators really hone in on in a tier 2 support system. Everything is done on an individual assessment process. So once a student is eligible to become a case managed student, they receive an assessment. And if something pings for them on that assessment and highlights a need, then they now get an additional assessment to really delve into and isolate what areas of strengths do they have in skills in the mental behavioral health area, and what areas of growth can we highlight to plan and deliver services for. Some of our outcomes over the last little bit has been looking for supporting the retention rate, right? So these are the kids who are from 7 to 12 who are moving from grade to grade. We had an annual target of 90%, and we actually hit 99% of our case managed students retained. The promotion rate from pre-K to 11, I'm sorry, the first one was who stayed in school. The promotion rate was who moves from grade to grade is 97%. The graduation rate, looking at that 12th grade, is 97% of all our case managed students graduate. Improvement in academics. So these are students during the assessment period who were targeted for academic need and support. 90% of the case managed students who were targeted for academics improved in academic area. We also look at attendance. Attendance, as we know, is not only hard to target and isolate the need, but what happens is when CIS is on a campus, we're doing these really cool program evaluations nationally right now. And what it is looking like is that even when CIS is just on a campus, it positively affects all students in that community, very specifically around attendance. A lot of times when you target attendance because they've missed 25 days by the second 9 weeks or 6 weeks, if however your campus goes, when we don't target attendance, but we talk to them and build that relationship and you ask why are you struggling to attend school? Then they say, well, I don't have clean clothes, or my mom works nights and then she's asleep, right? So, or I'm in high school and I work late because I have to support the family bills as well. Then CIS secondarily targets attendance, but primary targets mental behavioral health supports or social service supports, right? And so when you get to the root of what is occurring, both their social service needs or their mental behavioral health needs improve, as well as attendance will improve on that next component. So improvement in behavior, we are looking at, this is kind of my jam. And so looking in programming, we've done a lot of work around how to educate our site staff across the state in providing mental behavioral health groups to build those skills at the tier 2 level. And also looking at the overall outcomes, we're excited to see as they close out this year where this percentage is as well. So, we are looking at if you have any questions, right? Are there things that are popping up for you? We would love to see in the Q&A space, and I will stop sharing.
Ah, nice. Thank you so much, Sarah.
You're so welcome.
You definitely showcased some really phenomenal data points and also some really great strategies around CIS. One question that did pop up is around if I don't have a CIS affiliate currently in my district or campus, but I would like to explore them coming. What can I do? So that's one big question that's popping up right now.
Love that. Absolutely. So what I will do is I will drop the link for the TEA site for communities and schools, and you'll go down and look for your region and your area and tap that link, and it will lead you to the executive director of that affiliate. Then conversations can start with, hey, we're interested in our district or our campus becoming a part of CIS, and what are the logistics of that? Love that question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So for the sake of time, I know a few folks are putting questions in the Q&A. So I'll let you, Sarah, answer those questions directly in the Q&A so we can get to our next presenter
Yes,
to
sir.
round
Thank
us
you.
off for the day. And because of that, I am also gonna let y'all know and remind you that our poll survey is in the chat. So before y'all log off today, please complete our poll survey. And now I'll turn it over to Tammy to introduce our final presenter of the day.
Thank you, Ashton. Okay, so to round off our webinar today, I have the honor to introduce you to Mandy Young. She is the manager of the Special Education Technical Assistance team here at TEA. And Mandy's going to show you some really amazing resources that you can take away today. So with that, Mandy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all about the Texas Sped Support website. That's what I'm going to tell you. This is just a teaser for you today. I'm not going to go through an entire video or anything like that, but I am going to share my screen and show you this awesome website. Texas Sped Support was launched August of 23, so it's relatively new. I'm going to drop this link in the chat for you. Go here so you can follow along if you'd like. The video that we are also going to put in the chat, if you go to this website in this top right-hand corner where it says learn more, you click on that, there is the video. You can watch all about how to set up what the Texas Sped Support site is and how to set up your account. But it's a TA website for Texas educators, administrators, support staff, that houses all of our special education technical assistance. It includes online courses, guidebooks, tools, templates. It's an excellent resource for educators. And the first thing that I'm going to show you is if you go into the sign in button at the top here, you can create a new account. So go ahead and go up to the sign in, create a new account. You're going to want to after you see what this website can offer you. And when you have an account, it looks kind of like this. You can follow certain topics, including mental health. And then you can also bookmark topics. So for example, my bookmarks are about technical assistance for special education. But if you find mental health documents or resources that I'm going to share with you today, you can right now bookmark those so you can come back and look at them later. So you don't have to look at them as we're talking. So the easiest way to use this site is you just go into the browser. We're going to be talking about mental health today. So I'm going to type in mental health, and I've already done it because I was practicing. So mental health, search, do a search for these resources, and all of the resources pop up that have to do with mental health that have been that TA has created. And so the first one is supporting student mental health within MTSS. And then you can see right here, it says this is a workshop. Sometimes it says workshop, sometimes it says document, and other times it says collection, article. One of the things I'm going to tell you here is it also has view course. And if you click on something that says view course, it will link to TEA Learn. And these courses are absolutely free. It would be a great way for you to do any type of training with a team together or on your own. So definitely check that out. But I'm gonna show you 3 of the resources here is the autism and mental health fact sheet. This is a great resource and I just, for you just to see data, if you click on the view fact sheet, you can see some of the data that's been collected, some of the barriers, what can teachers do in the classroom, just more information about autism and mental health. You might want to know that there are autism specialists at all of the ESCs. So you can also find in tons of other trainings and resources around autism and that topic. So please check out autism. If you type in search this site and autism, there's tons of information about that. The next one I want to tell you about is the TIER mental health module. This is a collection of workshops that those ESCs provide training on through TIER certified trainers. And none of these are on that TEA Learn site that I was telling you about. They're in person, they're synchronous. But if you go to your ESC and find the TIER certified trainer, you can sign up for these workshops right now. There is a quick guide on that collection that gives kind of a high level overview. It's right here about these workshops. So check them out. And then the last one I was going to highlight is the TIER behavior module. It's in this interconnected systems framework. So if you go to this workshop, it talks a little bit about the framework, but specifically there are 3 workshops in this interconnected systems framework that brings PBIS and school mental health together. So it's an excellent opportunity for you to check that out. And those are the main 3 ones. I'm just going very quickly, but are there any questions?
Oh, someone asked what the link was.
Okay.
To Sped Support.
It is spedsupport.tea.texas.gov. I put it in the chat here. I'll put it in here.
Okay, and then someone just said, now where did you say create an account? If you'll just show that again.
So the create an account, you just go to login. Like I'm already logged in, but there should be a login right here. And here, I'll log out. And when you are sign in, when you click on this sign in button, there's a create a new account right here. So click on create new account. And then when you do have an account, it's just really cool. You can bookmark some of these resources. So like I said before, my bookmarks are not, but here, let me show you how to bookmark one. So I'm going to go into mental health again. I'm searching the site, mental health. Search. Maybe if it comes up. Okay, then if you're like, oh, I really want to learn more about this mental health module, let's view this collection. Up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a little bookmark. You can bookmark it. You click on that button, and then it'll be on my bookmarks page. So that when I log in again, I can say, oh yeah, TA was talking about mental health module. Here's my bookmarks. This is what Mandy was talking about. But you can bookmark almost anything. Another thing you should see, and I'm glad that you asked that, is look up here on the top. Sign up for SPED updates. It's really cool because if you click on that and put in your email address, you can click on, I want information on behavior. I want information on autism, and they will send you information on SPED updates for behavior and autism. It's a great way to get information and you're not online searching or whatever. You can also sign up for the Texas Education Agency update. You put in your email address and it's very similar. You click things that you're interested in. But I highly recommend sign up for SPED updates. I highly recommend making an account and bookmarking what you need.
I think it's very good. The question was asked, do you have to work for a district to get an account?
No, you don't. No, you don't. Not right now. It's all free. Anyone can sign up for it. Most of the resources on this site are for educators. There's another site called SpedTex, which are for parents. And if you check out SpedTex and share those with parents, they have more parent resources on SpedTex. But no, you do not have to have a district email.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mandy, for coming in and sharing those really quick resources with you. And I know we'll hear more from you and your resources probably at a later